What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave podcast here at the Culture Wave Media Network, and we are back to discuss the final season, what we think, season 3 of Netflix's most popular series ever. It is Squid Game. We are back to discuss it. We discussed season 2 back in December, and I'm going to be one of your hosts for this episode. My name is Darian Sean. I am joined once again by Sean Villa.
Hey, everybody.
Michael is producing this episode. He's unfortunately not going to be hosting it with us. He was on season 2, but just when at the time we're recording this, he hasn't had a chance to see it yet. So sorry, Michael, you're getting it spoiled.
M is here.
M is here. M is here. Sean, we already really talked a lot about this off camera, which I kind of wish we didn't, but we were getting passionate.
Yeah.
We're fans. You know, we want to talk about this stuff. Broad thoughts. I don't love where they went with this.
Nope.
And I'm really upset and disappointed that it seems like I'll start with my biggest gripe, which I've already discussed off camera with you. I'm getting sick of Netflix doing this thing, and I know probably other networks do it now, but Netflix seems like the number one perpetrator of extending things beyond like their capabilities. Not to say that the creator of this series wasn't able to still have compelling television at times in season 3, but I just think that you could have condensed season 2 and season 3 into like a supersized season to wrap this up.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of episodes that in this final season that, especially given the conclusion that we get, seem a bit unnecessary.
Yeah.
That's my biggest gripe with the season, but there are still good things to talk about. Broad thoughts. It still has the DNA of Squid Game, but there is a lot of stuff in here that unfortunately does not get the payoff that I think either of us were hoping for.
Yeah.
So that's my initial thoughts. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, I agree with you that after seeing season 3, it does make season 2 worse by proxy because it feels like we didn't need either of these seasons. I was hoping that there was going to be some kind of like grand payoff at the end where it all came together for me, like the message really got across. And you know what? I kind of feel like the best messaging that the show ever had was in the first season and in that finale. And if we had just left it there, I kind of think the ending of the show would have been better off for it. That being said, I agree with you. I think the season overall is good. I don't think this is bad television ever. I think it is the weakest season, and I think it's the weakest season before the ending. And the ending, I do think, is bad. I think this is a bad conclusion to the show. If it was a season finale, I think I'd maybe be like a little more apologetic because it could go some ways that redeem itself. But as far as we know, that's it. This is it. This Squid Game's over until the American Squid Game. And to kind of decide not to end the show and then get this ending as like the true ending, it just feels wrong. It feels bad. I think they kind of fumbled the bag in the end there. But there are good things I enjoy, so I guess we can break into it.
Yeah, I think what you talked about is obviously like one of the biggest things for me is with that first season. I remember with obviously the show being unbelievably massive, one of the biggest shows of all time. There was immediately talk of like we need to do, and Netflix has like merchandised the shit out of Squid Game. You know what I mean? Like Halloween costumes. You're talking things in restaurants, you're talking toys, all these different things for, again, that message of the first season that's basically like all about classism and all about like how, like you were talking about eat the rich and things like that.
Yeah.
And the ending of that season is so great that I don't understand why you needed to go further and beyond with that. And I remember even Jung-jae, the main character who plays Gi-Hun, also known as Player 456, he said initially, he's like, I just don't know if we want to mess with something that felt so perfect to us. It felt like it was something where we had a complete story. It was really compelling. It was great that we had all this massive success, but for me to want to come back, for the creator to want to come back, it needs to be something that is valuable. It needs to be something that tells this overarching idea or this bigger message that calls to us to kind of put this on. And then they come back and do not one more season, but they do again two more seasons in this continuous story where the biggest thing, like you just talked about, you didn't like the ending. It's almost though that it's hard to even understand what is the messaging behind the ending and the way that they conclude this season. So again, we can talk spoilers. We're going to be talking spoilers throughout. So there's your warning. But talk to me a little bit about the way that this show wraps up and why either you feel similar or what your interpretation maybe of that ending was.
Yeah, so, I think there are two types of Squid Game enjoyers, Scal. I think there's the people that go into the show and just want to see the games. And if you're that kind of person, I think the games this season are as good as they've ever been. There's one game that I think is like kind of weak or whatever, which is the jump rope. I think it's like fine. It sort of just feels very like rip-off-y of the glass floors from season 1. So I didn't love that one, but as well, I'm sure we'll get into in more depth. Hide and seek, great,
Yeah.
so good. And I also really like the final game. I think it's very interesting the way that they kind of play with that, and like the tension of that and the group dynamic. I think is really good. So if you're those people, you're gonna come to the show and you'll probably go, yeah, that was pretty good. It was cool. They had like some good themes, some good character work, and the games were fun and tense and well shot, well filmed, whatever, and I enjoyed them. I, however, am Mr. Theme. I love my themes. I like when stories have purpose and points and they're saying things. I feel like that's kind of the whole point in making art in general. And yeah, I think that if you're looking at it that way, this show was way stronger with an ending when season 1 came out. The message has kind of gradually been fading, I think, from the start of season 2 all the way until the end, where it's pretty much completely gone for me.
Yeah.
It feels like a show that really, I think season 2 and 3 were made with great intentions. I think they did have something they were trying to say, and it was just about the execution. I just don't think it really came together in the way that they thought it would, or the way that I wanted it to, which doesn't rob the season of value. I think that there's great stuff in here that I'm sure we'll talk about. I just think that the unfortunate reality of it is that we had a perfect ending, we decided to continue, and the ending's very far from perfect now. And that kind of just hurts the show as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other thing is that at the end, it's almost like, and again, you could look at it in different ways, like you talked about, but it's something where, as a viewer, if you are even someone that cares about the themes, like I think you and I do, you don't come away from the show being like, wow, I feel good about what happened. Yeah. There's nothing that there's no character that's left. There's no payoff to a lot of things. You talked off camera to me about how they had these B and C plots in terms of Jun-ho's story and trying to find the island and trying to get to his brother. And then the other character, you remember her name?
Yeah, hold on. It's like Nee something. Hold on. I'll pull it up. But yeah, I will definitely.
Noel, I think it is.
It's something.
N-O.
Noel?
Noel. Maybe it is
I'm
Noel.
going to go with that. That sounds too American, but I think that's like how it's spelled.
Yeah.
Noel. Yeah, so I'll break into that because you are raising the point that is my biggest dislike with the whole show.
Mm-hmm.
When we first covered season 2, that was my first review on this lovely podcast, by the way, full circle moment. Season 2, I said was really good. I still feel like season 2 is very good. But my biggest complaint was that Noel's plotline and Hwang's plotline, the people on the boat, feel like, oh, okay, like they're not that great now because they're going to resolve in season 3. Well, they don't. They don't resolve in season 3. So, that kind of blows for season 3. If you didn't know that in season 2, it kind of reminds me of like late Game of Thrones, where you're like, oh, like this is probably going to turn into something cool. But then like you see season 8 and you're like, fuck, and it kind of like ruins those prior seasons. That's what this will do on rewatch if I ever get around to watching this a second time. There's so much boat in these.
I was going to say Hwang especially, like, it's almost like you really love his motivation in season 2 and you love where he's going to, and the fact that he's assembling this team and he has a plan in place to try to get to this mission that ultimately is the biggest. That's that other part that you're rooting for, other than Gi-Hun's storyline. And he's just on the boat for 99% of the season.
Yeah.
And there's nothing compelling to what he's doing, and even what we get in the end with him is just that he wins in some way, shape, or form by obviously receiving all this money because of the baby, which we'll also get into, which is a crazy thing. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, it's this point of, this is a character that is probably the second hero, essentially, in the story. And you're rooting for this guy because of the way that his fate kind of ends at the end of season 1. And to get no like legitimate payoff, I think is like a really unfortunate miss that they just kind of fuck up in the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a great character. I think they put a great character that they had established from season 1. They gave him an awesome start in season 2. I mean, the opening of season 2, like those first 2 episodes are some of like, I think the best episodes in the show, where you see like the plan formulating and these characters that were separate in season 1 coming together, and they're going to take down the games together. But then they split them off. And you think that, oh, well, they're probably going to come together again and actually like get through on this plan in some way. And they just don't. So it hurts the setup. And there's so much setup that's not that entertaining. Listen, like Hwang on the boat, there's no tension there. every scene is just Hwang being like, well, we can go and look at this island and maybe they'll be there. And then they go to the island, there's nobody there. And then they go to the other island, there's nobody there. I said in the season 2 review that if we as the audience had known that the captain was a traitor from the start of season 2, it would have given us some opportunity for like tension building.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, like there's a fucking traitor on the boat and he's like doing some espionage and like we could have had like a little mini plot there. So I thought in season 3, well, at least, now we're going to have some tension on the boat. No, we don't. It's instantly thwarted. Yeah. Instantly. And then we just have more of fucking Hwang going around on the boat going like, I wonder where the island is. It's like, we just had this.
Yeah.
And then he gets to the island, and it's kind of hilarious that they dig themselves in a hole where he gets to the island and he's there for literally 30 minutes because there's a bomb going off that has a 30-minute timer. Mm-hmm. So you get... must be 12 hours of TV show of Hwang on the boat with his crew, and then they get to the island for 30 minutes, and he does nothing on the island. Nothing on the island. And it's just, I just don't understand it. I really don't. It's one of the most, like, confounding B-plot resolutions. And what bothers me even more is that there is a definite disconnect between what happens in the show and then the way that the characters talk about it in the epilogue. Because when Hwang is getting the gangster guy, who I think is another great, Chae, who's another great character that is not utilized correctly at all. Mm-hmm. When he gets him out of jail, they're acting like we did it.
Yeah.
You guys didn't do fucking anything. What are you saying? Like, he's like, yeah, we finally like thwarted the Squid Games. I don't think he says that, but like that's the vibe of the conversation. They're happy, they're cheery. They're like, we're gonna go like start a family together or some shit.
It's like they self-destructed that island.
Right. It's like you did not succeed. And even if like the Squid Games are gone, which seems to be the implication that they think happened, you didn't do that.
Exactly.
So like what is this like weird victory lap that we're getting at the end of the show? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to spoon feed you some sort of hero moment.
Right.
Like they're trying to make the audience be like, oh, well, like these are the characters you like, so just feel good about the fact that they feel good. And it's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, like, first of all, Gi-Hun as a character is the most compelling. Right, and we talked off camera about how great of an actor Jung-jae is, and how he's managed to go to different depths throughout these 3 seasons. And even him, though he is great in the season still, so much of what he's relegated to is being this gatekeeper for this child.
Yeah.
And even that, there's like, not that there's not tension, obviously, because there's a baby that's involved, but another one of my biggest gripes with this season is the logistical aspects of a baby being in Squid Game.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And how does this work? Now, some of the things got answered pretty quickly for me. I was worried about the food and how that was going to happen, and then like a guard comes out and starts feeding the baby formula, which okay, fine, the baby's eating. My biggest thing, because you talked about the jump rope thing earlier too.
Yeah.
And again, maybe I understand suspend disbelief, whatever. Mm-hmm. They are literally jumping constantly for what feels like, what is it, half an hour they have to do this in, right?
While, yeah.
Half an hour they are jumping up and down over this ginormous iron jump rope with a newborn child. This baby is 2 days old. The baby would die. The baby would die of shaken baby syndrome. And the baby not only lives through that, but the baby is our only survivor of the Squid Game. And it's something that is just so... To me, it felt so manipulative. It felt like something where they were like, "You've already seen old people die. You've already seen people kill their loved ones. You've already seen people kill their own children. Now you guys are gonna have to deal with the repercussions of not only is there a baby involved in the Squid Game, but they're gonna lose their mother, they're gonna lose their caretaker, and they're gonna lose their father." Right. And it just felt so, again, manipulative in the sense where the writing was so much smarter leading up to this season, and that's where it's like, I don't know why they decided to go this route. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, a baby is a MacGuffin in a movie, which is basically a plot device. Used a fancy writer word. But yeah, a baby's not a character. So when you have
can't even make decisions.
Yeah, it can't make any decisions. It has like no actionability in the script. It's just that you have your main character tied to an object that is basically just like holding a glass ball that if you put down, it might shatter into a million pieces and then the show's over. So it really relegates Gi-Hun to half a character that he was in the prior seasons because he's forced to deal with what is essentially, in a plot terms, an object that he can't leave because the baby can't do anything on its own. It's like it's a baby. So you get the sympathy and the empathy from the audience because it's a little infant child and you go like, oh, well, somebody's got to protect it, but not your main character. And I think that it's fine if he's the one to take on this baby, but I think it happens too early in the season. This is Jun-hee's child, and she's killed pretty quickly in the show. I think it's about the halfway point of the season.
Yeah,
is when jump rope happens, and from that point on, Gi-Hun doesn't have too many decisions to make. He really only has the one, which is to not stab everybody in the night. But other than that, his character on a scene-by-scene basis is just sort of like in the corner like this. And it's not, it gets very samey. And when you have that, cut into the boat. And then we're going back from the boat to Gi-Hun with his baby. And then we're back to the boat, and the pacing becomes a real problem. This is the first season where the pacing has ever been a problem for me. That said, great episode in here that is...
Episode 2.
Yeah, preceding the arrival of the baby. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, let's definitely do it.
So, hide and seek. We have the hide and seek game, which I think is a great idea for a Squid Game.
It definitely
I will admit, even if this show was terrible, which it isn't, it's not horrendous. I'm going to talk a lot of negatives because it is disappointing, but I don't think that this is like an atrocious, bad season of television. The games are always fun. They're always interesting. And hide and seek is one of the better games they've done. I think it's a real highlight of the season. And it's tension-filled. There's great character moments. I think everyone's little subplot in the maze is like the best that we have of any character moment in the season. What do you think about that episode?
I think it's worthy of, I was saying on IMDb, I think it's the second highest rated episode ever according to IMDb. And I think it's worthy of that. I think it's a top 3 episode of the series for sure.
Really good.
One of the things that it also, you just touched upon it a little bit, and we were talking about this again off camera, but it gives a showcase to what season 2 and 3 does better. I think maybe the only thing they do better than season 1, which is give us this eclectic cast of characters. Everybody has their own identity, and you can be succinct with who you're rooting for and the rivalries that are all existing within this in the aftermath of also trying to overtake the games. So there's so many different things that are happening, whether it's the trio of women that are all there before the baby is born, whether you have like the voodoo lady trying to guide things with her spirits, and they have the moments where she is marking everything with blood. Obviously, Ji-Yoon and Dae-ho and their rivalry, because he believes Dae-ho is the reason why everybody is dead. Also within that episode, I noted, like, this is the thing I kept thinking. Squid Game obviously does such a great job with production design. I just love the design of the way they do the mazes, and even in all the rooms looking different, and some of the doors take you out to like this platform where you can fall to your death. Like it's so innovative in the way that they create the game, and that along with the characters plays very much into what you talked about earlier, where it's like when you are there for the games, those are the games that you're like, man, what an inventive and cool thing. Like they made hide and seek, and even the thing with the keys, like that's an inventive episode. You know, that's Squid Game at its best.
It is. And, you know, I think Squid Game as a show will be remembered for the games. I mean, like it, you know, as much as the characters are fantastic in a lot of the earlier seasons, and even here at certain points, even though it doesn't resolve the way I want, I think the character work generally is really like astounding in a lot of ways. You mentioned the mother and son dynamic. I think is fantastic in this season. We have one of the best trans representations I've ever seen. She's fantastic. We have the, I guess, twist villain of the series is 333, who I had the name memorized. I lost it, but you know,
I'll find it for you.
Young-jae.
I think it's
something like that.
Young-gi.
Yeah, whatever. 333. You know who I'm talking about. Young-gi. Okay, so yeah, I think he is great. I think he's a complex villain. There's so much good stuff here. And I think that what's just so upsetting is that the games maintain the quality that they had while the character work just starts to suffer. And the writing starts to suffer. And that's what scares me about the future of this franchise, is that this will become, in the memory of the people making it and the memory of the audiences that watched it, that this was just about like cool games and watching people die, when it wasn't that. It had that. It's always had that, and that's always been a good part of it. But this was a show that was very intertwined with politics and emotions and talking about humans and like the way that we act and tear each other apart, and wealth, and, you know, just all these different huge themes that it was tackling. And we can't deny that that had such a major role in how successful this show was. And this season is the first time that I felt like that was not the focus. And that sucks. I think that like really hurts the show.
I think it goes from all of those themes to literally just the theme of dread. Like there's not really anything else that kind of has it going for it. And again, even like those hero moments at the end, they feel force fed. Like it's not something where they're going into those deeper themes. Like after the hide and seek episode, I think it kind of almost immediately stalls.
Yeah, I agree.
Like you lose all these characters that you do care about. You like lose all the things with the rivalries. Like the only and the way that the jump rope episode starts with the character again. Sorry, we're butchering all these names. There's a lot of characters obviously that we have to follow, but the character who is taking all the pills.
No, not Myung-gi. That's the other one.
Yeah, I'm gonna find him.
It's something else with an M.
I'm gonna find him in here. Here we go.
But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Nam-gyu is his name.
Nam-gyu.
Player 124.
Okay.
And how he's so reliant on these drugs, and the way that there is that feeling of how he's kind of neglecting and abusing this other guy in the game 123, and he winds up throwing the cross in the middle of the bridge. And like to me, that's something where I'm just like, oh shit, he's forcing this character to go out and do something. And I love the fact that when he finally gets there, the pill's not there. Like to me, that's a great, again, character moment continuing on. But after that point, once we get to the side where the second character makes it all the way across the bridge and just starts shoving people, I'm like, all right, so like everyone's just gonna die then. This is where we're gonna go. And that's literally the direction you go in, because at that point you lose the elderly woman who you care so much about, who does such a great job in this series.
Yeah, she is fantastic.
She is so good in this. And I was saying,
now, are you a sub watcher or a dub watcher, Skill?
I am a sub watcher.
Okay, so that's interesting because I'm a dub watcher.
Okay, so we have different viewing experiences.
Yeah, so I'll say whoever was dubbing the people in this season are great.
I heard that because there were a lot of complaints about I don't know. So you watched dub for season 2 as well,
I watched
right?
all of it dubbed. Yeah, I know. Which I'm sure the comments are gonna give me shit for. Sorry, comments. But yeah, I can't read for 30 hours of television.
Did you feel that it was the same for season 2 as season 3, or did you feel like there was?
No, I think season 2 they do a really good job too. But I noticed it because I agree. I think some of the strongest acting comes from like the old woman in the show, and Gi-Hun in this show. I think in this season. Sorry, is just great, and I think the voice actors really sell it. The English dub voice actors are pretty phenomenal here. I don't know about the VIPs because you said that they speak English in the sub.
They do.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I feel like they wouldn't dub over English in the English dub.
Because you don't get the subtitles when they're talking.
Okay, yeah, so... Yeah, no, they're not good. Whatever I watched in the dub or the sub, I don't know, like, however...
They're bad.
Yeah, they're really bad. That's the only voice acting that is atrocious. And it almost makes me think it's like, intentional because they're, like, supposed to be rich, greedy, like, annoying. But, I mean, whatever, dude. No.
Well, there's a bad line where they reference Marvel and DC superheroes, and it's
really bad.
So cringe-inducing that I had to pause the show, and I was like, "Ugh! Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? Like, this is not what this show is. This doesn't represent any of it." With the production design with the VIPs, I do love how we get these kind of tokens, these totems, I should say, for all the characters throughout. I thought that was a cool addition.
Yeah, I think the gold masks are cool. I will say, if anything has remained consistently excellent, it is the set design.
Yeah,
the 100%. Set design, the props, like the way they build these sets, and the way that the visual effects play into it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's seamless. Like, which is so funny because you have CGI Baby and CGI Rottweiler, which look horrible. But the rest of the show looks incredible.
Yes, I agree. The CGI Rottweiler was another scene where it just completely took me out of it because it literally felt like I was looking at a dog render from like a Dreamcast video.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Like it was very weird. It didn't look like a dog at all.
No, it didn't. It looked like a Cerberus plush, or something.
Like it was like a weird like plush platypus. Like I don't even know.
Yeah, it was like a fucking like Five Nights at Freddy's animatronic like popped up in the middle of the Squid Game.
100%. Which I don't. Again, you would think, with the amount of budget that this show probably has.
Yeah, it was odd.
Coming off of season 1 and season 2 success, I'm very surprised that is what we wind up getting. But one of the biggest things that we haven't touched on yet is one of the biggest talking points on the internet. You brought it up in the very beginning of the review, but there had been talks for a very long time about them doing, it was called Squid Game America, is kind of just how it was subtitled. Yeah. And David Fincher is on board to produce it. He may be directing it. It's been in talks for a long time. There were initial names that were attached, like Mark Ruffalo. There were rumors that Leonardo DiCaprio could be in this thing. And we still don't know if that's definitely going to happen. But at the conclusion of this, we do get a reveal of a very famous and popular American actress who is playing a recruiter at the conclusion of all of this, after the front man delivers the winnings that Gi-Hun had to his daughter. And I'm curious, in that being the final image, what your thought was, and the fact, like, are you excited for where they could go with it? I know, obviously, I think you've talked on the pod before, but you're a very, very, very big David Fincher fan. And the fact that the first name that they get attached to this potentially is Cate Blanchett, which is that's not a throwaway name. Like, she's an Oscar-winning actress. She, the fact that she even wanted to come on board for this, I think is interesting, because it's not like she does a lot of television, and she's jumping into the Netflix family to have this one-off appearance.
I mean, they also probably gave her $quadrillion,
for one Netflix scene where she literally has like one line of dialogue.
It's cool, though.
I'm curious on your thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm trying not to let the like future of the franchise impact how I feel about the finale of of this show, because this show is its own thing, and I think it's going to remain its own thing. I don't know if characters from Korean Squid Game are going to show up in American Squid Game. It feels like that would be something strange of them to do. I don't think they would, but yeah, you know me, I'm a sucker for David Fincher. I like Squid Game, and I'll probably watch the American Squid Game. I just think that this ending felt like it was setting up American Squid Game instead of concluding its own show, and that bothers me. That really rubs me the wrong way. And I'm looking forward to American Squid Game, but it feels like the identity of this show was so intertwined with Korea. And, like, I don't know anything about Korea, but I felt like I learned more about it because of the show. And, like, it got me into their politics, and, like, they were having an interesting discussion that I was pulled into. And I was learning about it, and it was talking about people in a broader sense. And I just hope that the American Squid Game doesn't go, oh, well, they're going to play Manhunt because that's like an American game, and or they're going to have a baseball game, rather than thinking like, well, let's talk about like American politics or something. Or let's talk about like wealth discrepancy in America. I hope that that's the case. I don't think that's going to happen.
I think that's fair, because I think if they decide to go forward and that is the next thing that they wind up doing, it needs to be innovative and it needs to be its own thing, even though it's still going to fall in line with being in a franchise. Yeah, like things are different in terms of the way that rich Americans act comparatively to potentially rich Koreans, even though the VIPs are American.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, there's a statement in itself that the VIPs are American. That's like an interesting decision. Yeah, and it's definitely intentional that it's a whole bunch of like white American English speaking people that show up for the Squid Game. So now we're going into an American Squid Game, and the show needs to acknowledge that. Like, it needs to acknowledge that like the people that are behind the suffering of like a foreign nation are American. That's like intrinsic to the politics of the show, and I wanted to have the balls to talk about that and be like, yeah, like we got like real problems here. And I think with a lot of American media that comes out that's like as corporatized as Squid Game is going to be, and like how hugely budget earning it is that ironically it's a show that's kind of like Eat the Rich culture war being made by a company that's funded by billions and billions and billions of dollars. True. So I understand how it loses that. I get that, because if I'm in the writer's room and I'm trying to like sell a franchise to America, I don't want to have like a downer ending about like wealth discrepancy and how bad like they're fucking over the middle class and the lower class, because I'm trying to sell my show. So like I understand it, but there is something meta there that's so fascinating to me that I'm scared will be lost in the future of this franchise. I think it's going to become a show that's just about like, it's going to be Beast Games basically. Like, Beast Games isn't talking about anything. There's no acknowledgement of like, oh, we're having a bunch of people that like desperately need money compete and lose and cry, and we're recording it for our entertainment. That's essentially what Squid Games is, and that's also what Beast Games is. But Squid Game was saying something about it. Yeah. And in this third season, it feels like it's saying less. And my concern is that it's out of fear that someone's going to get mad. And I hate that. Yeah. Because that's the point of the show. It's like it's an Eat the Rich show, and I don't know.
Well, also we don't get really a full conclusion with the front man, which is something where I think that what he did by going into the games in season 2 was probably my favorite aspect of season 2 in general, and made a really compelling and interesting component that was very different from season 1 and flipped things on its head and made you be like, oh, how is this dynamic going to go? Yeah. And he almost gets relegated to kind of nothing in this season.
Yeah, he also has nothing to do.
Nothing to do.
I feel like a lot of the characters have nothing to do. And what is this, a 6-episode season?
6-episode season.
Yeah, that's not good. You know you have a problem if all of your main characters aren't doing much.
It should have been one season.
Yeah.
You don't need 7 episodes for one, 6 episodes for the next. You can just make a really, really solid 10-episode season.
Yeah, fuck it. Stretch it to 12. You're Netflix. Like, there's no rules.
Exactly. That's
true. You
true.
drop a 48-episode season. Like, it's Netflix. Who cares?
And people will still watch it.
Right.
People will definitely still watch it. But yeah, the frontman was definitely a character that I was disappointed with. And I know there was another character, 333, Myung-gi, who was the father of the child.
Mhm.
And there's the whole dynamic. And he's the one that winds up killing the trans contestant, who is like you said, like, not only a great representation, but definitely one of the most likable characters in the history of Squid Game.
Yeah.
And you get to this point where it's like, oh, like, they have an interesting dynamic in the beginning of the final game, and then he gets to this point where he makes a decision that completely flips comparatively to where he's leading up to, which just didn't make a lot of sense to me, and I think you felt similarly.
Yeah, well, so I think a lot of the season's just about missed potential of setting things up and then not concluding in the way that I wanted them to conclude, or just not concluding at all. He's a great example of that, because I think in this season especially, he's such a complex character until the last episode, because he's someone that seems to care about Jun-hee. He like seems to care about the baby. Like really wants to like get away and like start a family with her. It seems like when she dies, he sort of like crashes out and he's like very depressed and he kind of just like hides away with the group for safety. But then we see in hide and seek that he does kind of have like a bloodthirsty side. Like he doesn't really mind killing, and that makes him like dangerous. And I thought the show was going to build up to someone who was like complicated in a way where he's like morally gray and like a fucked up dude, but he's on our side. And like the show hasn't really done that. Like a lot of the time, the main characters that we're following, like the quote unquote good guys, like don't want to kill anybody. They're very nice. They want to treat the games fairly. Like to have someone on the good side that's like kind of a piece of shit monster, but is like serving Ji-Yoon's agenda could have been great. But then at the end, he does like the DreamWorks like villain twist reveal where he's like, oh, actually, I'm going to kill my own baby, like just to get the money all for me. That was my plan all along. And it's like, I don't buy that. I don't think that's true. Like, it feels like they just wrote that in there to make like a cool final confrontation. But like, that's not how I read his character at all.
Yeah.
And I that really like kind of disappointed me.
Well, even in the hide and seek episode, though, again, the episode is great. When him and Nam-gyu start, like Nam-gyu's like, let's just kill as many people as we can. That doesn't feel like what his character wanted at all. Again, the whole thing is like, I just want to go and protect Jun-hee because she's the one that is about to have my baby.
Right.
You know? And I don't understand the motivation behind that. I don't understand why he was going about to do that.
I could kind of understand it because he does, like, I think in his brain he's trying to be rational, because the only time that he like folds on it is not like just at the like the provocation of violence. It's the idea that maybe if we kill more people, like the game will be easier next. I think he says something to the extent of that. Like if there's less people, there's less to like contend with later. Like you're safer. So I kind of understand the logic there, but again, he's morally gray. And I like that he's like willing to go to a level where it's like evil, but he's doing it to protect a character we like. And then it turns out
that gets thrown out.
And then it's like, well, actually, no, he just wanted to kill people based on the ending. It changes that scene, and it changes it for the worse. It makes him less complex.
Yeah, no, so. I think that's fair. Anything else in terms of that we might have missed? I mean, I feel like we covered a lot of it. I know we've been pretty negative.
We have been really negative.
Hit me with some positives.
Okay, yeah. So the hide and seek game is great. I also think that so I said prior to the podcast, and you had told me to mention this on the show, I think that this season is constantly trying to subvert your expectations, and a lot of the times that works, and a lot of times it really hinders the show. The situation where I think it works is the final crew. I think the people that are at the end, you would never guess are like the people that were actually going to be at the end of the game, other than Gi-Hun. Obviously, he's going to make it to the end. But the rest of the crew, I mean, if you start season 2 and just look at like the huge range of like giant cast of characters, I would have never thought that we're like the people that are in the final game would be there. And I like it. I think that's cool. I like that the show had me guessing, and I like that 333 is the last guy that has to contend with Gi-Hun. I don't like the way they do it, but I think it's cool that like the weird like crypto guy from season 2 is like the final antagonist. Cool.
Yeah.
And same thing with that old guy. Talk about a character I love to hate. That guy fucking sucks, but like in a great way. In a like he's great, great to hate.
Yes.
You know. yeah, the mother-son dynamic.
That was the one
fantastic.
that was the one I was going to bring up, because I think that you just kind of going off of what you were saying too, in terms of the show does such a great job of subverting your expectations. The biggest issue is just that it doesn't have the payoff to those expectations being subverted. But again, within that amazing episode of Hide and Seek, you get this ending in which this elderly woman who is literally willing to switch sides with her son to make sure that he can survive in some way, shape, or form. He has a better chance of survival, and he doesn't have the guts to go and do these things. That at the end of the day, she is just trying to provide a life for the innocent, because that's how she views her son. Like, that whole conversation she has with Gi-Hun after that as well, in the beginning of episode 3, might be some of the best character work in the entire show.
It's really good.
It's really, really good.
Really good.
And how it has the payoff even at the end of the episode, where she's trying to be like, it's not your fault that these things happened. You were trying to get us out of a really fucking shitty situation.
Right.
And at the end, he's like, it's not your fault, like, to Jun-hee. So I think that there are definitely redeeming aspects of this season. I don't like the same thing. I don't want to say that it's necessarily a bad season of television, because I still think it's another season of Squid Game, and there's a lot of things to like about it. I just think that when you build up such a massive series like this, and you come back to do a multi-season thing, and you have a multi-episode drop, and everybody in the world is watching the show, 60 million viewers in 3 days since this dropped is crazy.
It is.
To not have it end in a way where season 1 ended so well is where, for me, it just drops the ball, and that sucks.
Yeah, it just goes out with a little bit of a fart. Like a little bit of like an airtight, like, it's just kind of like, all right, yeah, it was funny, it was entertaining, I laughed at it, but like, okay, really, that's all you got? That's a fucking crazy metaphor. I don't know where that just came from. Yeah, but no, I agree with you. It's a decent season. If we're gonna get into ratings, I think I'd give this like a 6.
Okay, so I'm only a little bit above you.
Okay,
I'm a 6.5.
All right,
I'm a 6.5. So I think
13 out of 20, folks. 13 out of 20.
Yeah, no, I really wish that we got something better than we were kind of given, and I think that you talked about the games thing, like they're gonna keep, like they made this a reality show already, so they're gonna be like, oh, now we have stuff for the next season of the Squid Game reality show, and it's like, it is Beast Games, like that's literally what they're just doing at this point, to just conglomerize this as a bigger thing. So I'm curious on what they're going to do with the dynamic if they decide to make Squid Game America. I don't know how that's going to be. I have faith in David Fincher. It's hard not to, as a fan of a lot of things he does. But I don't know. Like you said, it's unfortunate that such an iconic series now has to go out with a whimper instead of being remembered for how good it was.
You know what? I feel like I want to just like shrug at this season and like, that sucks. Because I think this was a great show. And to go off, to end a great show with that sucks. That almost hurts more than like that was atrocious. Yeah. Because I'm gonna like forget it. Yeah. And like there's great stuff in it, and that's what hurts. Gi-Hun's sacrifice, I like his last line. I like the general plot beats of what happens and how they set up like, oh, actually, like you didn't destroy the Squid Games. That's in line with the theme of the show. There's stuff there that on paper could have worked. It's just the execution was just like sloppy. And I don't really know what happened. I don't know like the lore behind the production or what went wrong. But regardless, we got what we got. There's good stuff in here. I would still say if you've watched the other 2 seasons, you should check out season 3.
Yeah, you should finish the show.
Yeah, finish the show out. You'll get stuff that you like. There's some great sequences as we talked about. But yeah, I mean, I was hoping for better, I guess. So it's a little disappointing, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. But let us know in the comments, what are your guys' thoughts on Squid Game Season 3? We'd love to hear some of your favorite moments from the season where you guys let down like we were. Did you guys actually like this season more than Season 2? And maybe you guys actually really enjoyed Season 3. I'm sure there are people out there that still love the conclusion of the show. So we'd love to have a conversation with you guys in the comment section. Give this video a like if you guys can, and subscribe to us and hit that bell for alerts. We have new episodes dropping pretty much every single day. We have a lot of other reviews upcoming for you guys if they're not on the channel already. We have stuff. We have the Bear Season 4 review coming. We have 28 Years Later. We have F1. A lot of superhero content upcoming in the month of July. It's Superman month. It's Fantastic Four month. So we got a lot of stuff to cover. And you guys can also follow us on social media if you don't already. All that stuff is below me in the video, and it's also in our YouTube description. So thank you guys for tuning in. Just signing off. I'm Darian Scalamoni.
I've been Sean Villa.
And we'll see you guys next time.
This is the culture.